So we are live. We will be going live on Facebook shortly. So welcome everybody to our 37,000th live seller seminar since the advent of the coronavirus COVID-19 shutdown. Not quite 37,000, but I think we're working on like 8 or 9 at this point, which has been pretty good. So some familiar faces joining us today and a little bit of a deviation. So for those of you guys who have seen our seller seminar or our buyer seminar or some of the other things that we've prepared, we're going to do some stuff a little different today. Number one, I changed the order of our guest speakers. So that right there is like mind blowing. I mean, everybody should be just really, really excited for that. Number two, I am going to go through some right now current market stats that I think are going to be really, really interesting for people. So I'm going to start right off by pulling up our slide deck that we use. And hold on one second while I do that. And we're going to go through some really cool stuff. Okay. You guys see my screen at this point or no?
No.
No? You just see me? Oh, that is incredibly bizarre. There we go. Now we got it. Now you see it, right?
Yep. Perfect.
Awesome. We may start slow, but I'll tell you, once we get going. Okay, so my name is Matt Miale. I run the Miale team at Keller Realty here in West Hartford, Connecticut. We service really the entirety of Hartford County and most of the state of Connecticut with 16 full-time real estate agents and our team of 5 administrators. Last year, we sold just under 400 homes, and we are, despite all of the things that have come into 2020, on pace to do close to 500 this year. So I am joined today by a team of professionals who are going to share their role in the home selling process. And then today we're also going to do a really interesting overview of the current market that we are faced with. So let me start off with our panelists. So we're joined today by Jason Kilduff of Ward Kilduff Mortgage. Jason and I have known each other for over a decade. At this point, are we talking about 12, 13 years, Jay? Yeah.
At least. I think more.
Yeah. So we've probably been a party together. I mean, well over 1,000 transactions together. So Jason's a great resource in the mortgage space, and I'm really grateful to have him with us. Also joined by Richard Witt, one of the preeminent real estate attorneys here in Hartford County. Rich, you've got an abundance of experience. So how many years have you been practicing law, Rich?
21 years.
21 years. So just a young buck in the legal field. So how many transactions do you think that you've closed at this point?
It's hard to say. I'd probably have to go by a per week volume. It's on average 25 to 30 per week, even since COVID started.
That's amazing. So if we do that times 21 years times 52 weeks a year, it's a boatload. Sounds good. Awesome.
It's not always like that, but this has been an exceptional year, and last year was exceptional.
And it's busy.
This is turning out to be an exceptional spring.
Yeah, and so we're gonna talk a lot about kind of what's going on in that and why. Also joined today by Ryan Keating of the Keating Agency, insurance agency here in West Hartford. So Ryan, how long have you been that's a family company, right? The Keating Agency. So how long have you guys been servicing the community?
Yeah, we've been in West Hartford Center for 3 generations, over 50 years now. So it's my dad's sister and I heading up our West Hartford office and working with a lot of the great people on the Miale team and generations of residents.
So we have so 3 generations of experience coming out of the insurance world joining us today. So awesome. And also Melissa Muszynski. Melissa is renowned for her design talents and capabilities. So I'm very happy to have you join us, Melissa. So what's something that we should know about you and your business?
That business is still booming. The real estate industry is hot right now, and I'm staging multiple homes every month. And now is a really good time to also tackle some home improvement projects.
No question. I like, maybe we should get a general contractor on here at one point, right? To talk about getting your house ready with what kinds of projects make sense. I love that idea. Thanks for joining us, Melissa. So I thought that today what I would do is share with you guys a little bit. This is me, by the way, 10 years younger, shaved, 20 pounds lighter, but it's still me. I promise. That's not a stand-in. That didn't come out of a frame that I bought at Marshall's or anything like that. That's actually me. I've been doing this. I've been in the real estate business really since I was 19 years old. I bought my first house with my father and on the campus of Keene State College. We're right off campus where I went to school and rented rooms out to some of my friends and fraternity brothers. So real estate has been really in and around everything that I've done for the last 25 years. It's in my blood at this point, and I love what I do. I love the people that I work with. Our mission is to empower people, the people we serve and those we serve with, and we really live by that every day. We do. We run an amazing team here that puts our clients and the needs of our clients in front of all the other things that might happen. And so proud and happy to bring you guys a little bit of information today about why the market is what it is and why it might be a good time to sell and what you need to know about it. So let me jump into this here. So this has been really exciting because a lot of people know me as like a people person. They know I like to go out and talk to people and be, out and about. But I'm also a little bit of like a closet like data nerd. I love numbers and I love watching trends and seeing kind of what's happening. Any of my former clients know that about me, that I sometimes bury them in numbers and they're oftentimes like, cut to the chase, Matt, what are we supposed to do here? But I really know that you can see a story unfold. So one of the things about trends is that you often don't know, and particularly in a trend like the one that we've experienced here with COVID-19, you really don't know what you're dealing with until you're out of it, right? So you don't actually know like what the impact has been until you can look in the rearview mirror and see what's already happened. So one of the things that we've been tracking literally week by week is the average number of showings per day across the entire MLS in the state of Connecticut. So we have an MLS here in the state, which is called the statewide CTMLS. And about 95% of all real estate listings show up inside of that. And all of those appointments to go see those properties, which is the farthest, up the pipeline that you can get towards seeing what the activity in the market looks like, are tracked through a company called Showing Time. Any one of our clients that's ever listed a property knows what Showing Time is. That's the service that actually schedules the showing. So what you'll see is that in January, we had about 3,410 showings per day, which is typically about the lowest it gets in the year, right? Right after Christmas, early January, that's about as low as number of showings as you're going to see in any given year or that we've ever experienced, right? And then the bell curve starts to turn up normally. So you'll see that in February, as was expected across the entire month, we had 4,166 showings on average per day. And then, of course, early March, we all remember what happened. Schools got closed, everything shut down. There was a lot of fear, a lot of concern about what the impact of COVID-19 was going to be, both in our businesses, our lives, and our health. And we saw a dramatic turn down in the number of showings. Now, even in a hot market with low inventory, showings don't typically go down. Showings are a direct reflection of how many houses and how many buyers are in the market and how active they are. And so what we saw was a very, very sharp turn down to 3,009 in the month of March as an average number of daily showings. And then we really hit what I am looking back through the rearview mirror at as kind of the bottom of what we were going to expect from an activity standpoint, which is in April. in April, on average, 2,179 showings on active listings in the MLS per day. That's the bottom. We know it's the bottom because we're looking in the rearview mirror and you can see the last 3 weeks, that trend very significantly turning up. And so it appears that we have seen what the impact of COVID-19 shutdown will be, at least for now. And I know there's a lot of talk in the market about a second wave and about the impact of opening up and all that. And I won't even hypothesize about what that's going to mean. But what I do know is that as of right now, we have seen the real estate market condition turn upward, meaning that buyer activity is now reflecting what we would have expected in a traditional seasonal market. So seeing 4,945 showings on average per day so far this past week, and then 3,195 the week before and 3,015 the week before. So more than double in a month what we were seeing in April. So just want to throw it to you guys. When you look at that, is that standing up for what you're seeing? Rich, Jason, Ryan? I mean, Melissa, you're obviously busy staging homes. What do you guys think of when you see that?
Those numbers hold up tremendously. It's actually quite shocking. Like I said, we have both offices with 6 paralegals. If I had more foresight, I'd be looking for another hire. But at this point, you just want to be cautious. We have 6 paralegals just working as hard as we can, and I think Jason can back all that up because we're working in unison with his office on a lot of transactions. So it's and Matt. So it's and his team. So it's sort of unreal, and it's unexpected, and it's quite wonderful, to be quite honest.
It is unexpected for sure. We were not sure coming into this shutdown what the impact was going to be. I think that we all expected that what we saw in April would have probably maintained at least through May and June. At least that's what we looked at from our angle. We said, what if we get to the lowest point we've ever seen and have to hold firm there for 2 to 3 months? But here's what's been fascinating about how this has started to show up. So in addition to that, what we've seen is this very consistent decline in inventory. So you'll look back and it was really the peak of inventory, which would have been our seasonal incline, was around the first and second week of March, right? Now that trend line where you'll see on March 9th, that week, on average, we had 3,624 total active listings on the market. Now that number historically and traditionally would continue to go up. So you'd see that number creep up. And even last year, I think we even got to an all-time high of around 4,000 active listings currently on the market. And then that inventory obviously gets eaten by all of the buyers that are in the market. We have never seen this kind of a sharp decline in inventory. 9 weeks of consistent inventory decline. So if you just think about what we're talking about here, in that we have more showings going up, at the same time, we have less homes to go see. So homes are getting more and more in demand. So historically and seasonally, this is the busiest time for new listings, right? We normally are putting massive amounts of inventory on the market and buyers are showing up and buying all that up. But today, at 2,442 active listings on the market as of the week of 5/18, that is the lowest we've ever seen. Now, most of us are expecting there to be an upturn in that, because people are now starting to feel like the market's opening up a little bit. People are also recognizing what that opportunity looks like in the marketplace, saying, wow, what we know is really simple. Real estate's not that complicated economically. It's a supply and demand business. When supply is low and demand is high, prices go up. And right now, we are very much in a low supply, high demand inventory market. And so prices are starting to go up. That low inventory has created a rush on certain segments of the market. What's fascinating is that there are also segments of the market that are not being impacted or have yet to be impacted. And I'll talk about that in a second, because I think it's really important to understand, with low inventory, well, where are all those sellers that have always been out there? Where did they go, right? So we'll talk about that in a second. So here's what we're seeing. The total number of new contracts per week, and some of you may have seen the headline in the Hartford Courant that I think it was last week, or maybe it was even this weekend, that talked about how April was kind of a banner month, like transactionally. we have seen 13 weeks of consistent transactional incline. So this is the number of units that go under contract in a given week. And you'll see week over week over week, more and more houses are getting eaten off the market. So we have less and less inventory and more homes are coming off the market, and no new houses are being put on to replace that demand. So again, the same point being that this is historically and seasonally when we would see the inventory inclining at a very similar pace to the number of transactions, at least in the curve. The curve would be similar, but here we're not seeing that. And what it's really looking like is about a 2-to-1 ratio of homes being sold to new inventory. So for every 2 homes that come off the market, only 1 gets back on the market. So that story is a very good story for sellers who are willing to put their house on the market. Now, there's some impacted price points that are very, very specifically impacted. Multifamily, for instance, if you own a multifamily property, there is a window right now to get a maximum sale price because there is so low. There's the lowest inventory I've ever seen in my entire career in multifamily property listed on the market. In addition to that, that first-time home buyer market is red hot. Anything that goes on the market that's really priced under that $400,000 price point it's all going with multiple offers. There are more buyers eating that inventory than there are sellers willing to put their houses on the market. And that's the point. That shortage of inventory is coming as a direct result of move up buyers. So what happened when COVID-19 and the coronavirus came, only the most motivated sellers put their homes on the market. So only the people that didn't have an impending reason to sell said, I have to put my house on the market no matter what. A large portion of our market said, I'm going to wait this out and see. Those are typically our move up buyers. And those move up buyers that would have a home to sell, which would typically be, say, in the $150,000 to $400,000 price point, are also your buyers at your higher price points. They're typically selling something 150 to 200 or 150 to 400, excuse me, and then going and buying something 400 to 700, right? That's kind of the price range. What's interesting is that 400 to 700 price point has been very slow. There hasn't been a lot of transactional activity there. Now what you see, and what's going to be interesting, and this is me putting, again, that real data geek hat on, what's interesting is that prices are actually coming down in those higher price points because there's an abundance of inventory in that over 400 market, and there's nothing at the lower price point. What's going to happen is those price points are going to continue to come down as people get more and more aggressive and need to sell, while those price points at the lower point are getting bid up by multiple buyers. At some point, there will be a confluence. And what will happen is the values with the market will self-correct. The people will ultimately say, it's worth it for me to sell today because I'm going to get a price that's so good and be able to buy something at a higher price point than I would typically have been able to buy. Which, by the way, leads me to Jason. So I'm going to grab you for a second, Jay. Talk to us about interest rates. Like we have historically low rates right now, right?
The rates are crazy, right? So, I mean, if you're
crazy's good, right?
Right. Crazy isn't good. I mean, everyone loves, that's the magic question, right? Yeah. What's the rate today? Well, long story short is there's a lot of things that are going to impact rate. It's going to be your credit score, amount of down payment, what type of property you're buying, but they're at historic lows, right? We're a little bit off the very bottom, right? Which was more or less like the tail end of March, but not that far up. I would say a solid person purchasing a single family with good credit and a decent down payment is going to look at something in the, low to mid threes.
Got it. That's really, I mean, that's amazing. So you can borrow money cheap. And if you're a move up seller, meaning you have a home to sell and a home to buy, and you happen to be in a home that's probably going to be listed somewhere between 150 and 400, right? Even up to 500. That house is very likely to get snatched up pretty quickly. And then you're going to have an opportunity to borrow more money to go buy a more expensive home while those homes are in a depressed price point at a rate that we haven't really seen historically in 15 years, right? I mean, for rates to be in the threes, that like we've had blips, but this consistent.
Right. It's an amazing opportunity.
It's a big deal. It's, you know, again, as a bit of a nerd around this stuff, like it's fascinating to watch how this has played out. So any comments about that stuff? Ryan, Rich, Melissa, as you guys are seeing me kind of go through these numbers, Rich, you've already mentioned it holds up, but what are your thoughts about this? I mean, what are you hearing in the marketplace from people that you're talking to?
On my end, Matt?
Yeah, anybody. Just
Yeah.
listen to see what you guys think.
I mean, the only thing I'm seeing, Matt, that is I'm running into lately is not only what you're saying is there's not enough homes on the market, but I've been with you and the team since COVID started. So we had an action plan, we enacted it, and we're at this point now, I consider us seasoned veterans of this COVID market.
Yeah.
What I'm running into is people trying to get their homes on the market who are terrified because we've been in it for months. This is brand new to them. So it's almost like a hurdle you have to get them to even consider putting the homes on the market. And I'm hearing that across the board from different agents where, you know, they want to put it on, but they don't want somebody in their house. They're terrified about, you know, and we sound very calm out there, myself, because I'll have one of your agents call me and I'll talk to the seller, and your agent's calm, I'm calm, you're calm, Jason's calm. And then sometimes I think, you know, we're so into it that we've got to just realize that some of these people are just terrified still.
Yeah, you know, Rich, I think that's a phenomenal point. You know, we made, obviously, the group of us as an organization, the Miale team, in collaboration with our vendor partners, sort of made a decision early on that we were going to put health and safety first, and we were going to continue to serve the market and our community no matter what it took, right? And so you make a great point that people are still not comfortable with, even they see these numbers and say, well, how can that be? Almost like, you know, wow, that seems crazy that that's happening. But here's the good news, right? So the governor deemed that real estate services and what all of us do are part of the essential services to keep our economy going. And what we've been able to do in order to navigate that is keep our clients safe and keep our buyers safe and keep our agents safe by following the CDC recommended, you know, standards of practices for engagement, right? It's just keeping, and it actually is, it's a lot easier than people realize, right? Because you've got to keep 6 feet apart, no more than, you know, one person at a time through a property or in a room, using hand sanitizer, washing your hands, opening doors, that kind of thing. And our agents are practiced at it at this point, and clearly a lot of others are too. So you bring up a good point. So I would just suggest to anybody that's watching that does have concerns to reach out to any of the professionals that are here that can talk you through it. Anyone on my team can talk you through it, or even if you have a real estate agent and you just want to ask them questions about it, be sure to just do that. Reach out to them and ask, because the standards of practices are in place. And, you know, we've got, to Rich's point, we've got almost, I think at this point, are we 10 weeks in, almost 10 weeks of experience around keeping people safe and you know, a success ratio around it. So with that said, let me talk to you guys a little bit about kind of what the listing process looks like. So again, those of you that have watched our seller seminar in the past understand that, you know, what I really hope to do today is just kind of give you an idea of, you know, what does listing your home look like in a traditional market. And then we sort of talk about what the impact of COVID is. So there's really 3 kind of phases to getting your house on the market. There's the pre-listing, the active listing, and then the sale process. A lot of times when I start a conversation with a customer, they're calling me and they're asking me, most of the questions they're asking me are about the pre-listing. They're how do I get ready? How do I know what to price my house for? How do I know, you know, what should I price my house high in order to negotiate? They have a lot of questions about that. And there's really kind of 4 parts of it. And they're laid out right here. There's an initial meeting and a walkthrough of your home. That should be done with a professional real estate agent. Obviously, you know, we on the team believe very firmly in the service that we provide. And really, you've got to get some professional insight around this, because this is, particularly in this type of a market, this is just not a market where you want to try to navigate this and learn on the job. You know, there's a lot of nuance to how do you have people come through your home, and what are the right questions even to ask. So, and then in the pre-listing, you also want to talk about getting your house ready. And this is really Melissa's expertise, and she's going to talk a little bit about what her process looks like. But in the staging and home improvement process, what we're looking for is the best bang for your buck, just using that cliche, it's all about where do you spend money inside of getting your house ready to go on the market that will give you the highest return on investment. There's no perfect home. There's no such thing. Even a brand new home is not a perfect home. I just recently, this past year, had an experience with a home that was less than 2 years old that was sold. And in the sale process, lots of issues came up through the home inspection for our buyers. And so there's really no perfect home. The idea behind your pre-listing process is making sure that the things that really need to be taken care of in order for it to be a smooth transaction are taken care of, and that we're putting your home in its best possible condition for marketing. Because it's like hiring an art director to set up a magazine layout or a director to put a commercial together for television. We want to make sure that your home looks the best it possibly can before we take pictures of it. In addition to that, most sellers are really interested in, well, what can I get? How much is it worth? That's what people want to understand. And that really is, it's always a price range. It's always going to be, it's between here and here. And the variables that are going to impact, whether it's between here and here, are usually the things that are outside of our control, that are up to the market, interest rates, who shows up and when, and how motivated sellers and buyers are at that given point in time. But that price range is really, really important to understand and to have good consultation around, because a good real estate agent is going to let you know that the difference between getting a high price or a low price is the strategy with which you enter the market. And so you want to make sure that you've got a good consultant to help you with that. And then obviously you get your house ready for sale. You go through the process of understanding what showings look like. You go through the process of being prepared to get your home on the market. And all the rules. What do I do with the dog? What do I do with the cat? Where do I go when I have a showing? All that stuff. We cover all of that in the pre-listing. Then you get into the active listing phase. And the active listing phase is when, the sign goes in the ground. Your house gets put on every available marketing resource that's out there, both online and offline, and you start having showings. And we have some formulas that we follow on our team that are pretty successful in predicting what our outcomes are going to be. And that usually looks like X number of showings equals X number of offers. And we can usually identify that based on what we see in the historical data on the market. So we know that any house that enters the market at a certain price point is likely to sell at a certain price after X number of showings. And we can look at all that data and give people a really good idea of what to expect. And so we often will do that while we're in the active listing phase. The other part of active listings that's really important is the communicating feedback. And what people don't realize is that there's no house that sells to every single person that looks at it, ever. It's never happened, right? So you only have to sell your home to one person. And so when you list a home, even when you hear those stories of, oh, my neighbor listed their house and they had 3 offers. If they had 3 offers, they probably had 20 showings, which means 17 people said, no, I don't want to buy that house. 3 said yes, right? But you only can sell it to 1. What's really important is understanding feedback. And this is where real estate agents, especially experienced ones, can offer so much insight and help a seller really maximize the value of their home by understanding what is it exactly that the feedback means. Because oftentimes sellers will hear one piece of feedback and think that that becomes gospel. Somebody didn't like the rug, I should tear it out and replace it. One person that doesn't like the rug doesn't become the reason that a house hasn't sold. 8 other people might love it. And so your real estate agent really does offer that kind of insight for you to help you understand what the right decisions are while you're in that active listing phase. During an active listing, that's also when you have open houses, both broker open houses, where real estate agent will introduce your property to the real estate agent community, and also open houses to the public. Now we are doing open houses still. We're doing them in a controlled fashion. We're doing them virtually. If you've been on our Facebook page before, you see that we've been doing at least 3 to 5 open houses per week. We're setting them up by appointment only and several other different ways that we're getting people to come and tour homes without having to sign agreements with real estate agents, so that they still have that retail experience of coming and seeing a home. So open houses are a big vehicle to drive people in to see homes that could potentially become buyers. And then, of course, you've got the offer and the closing process. And in this process, again, this is where you hear the traditional negotiating. This is where you hear about multiple offers coming in and real estate agents navigating that with their clients. This is where you hear about home inspection process, and all of this stuff, which may seem overwhelming to somebody who's going to list their home for the first time, is all kind of standard par for the course real estate transactional activity. And this is why you want to hire a really good team to help coach you through it, because each one of these things can be done the right way or can be done the wrong way. And you want to have the right people working for you. So with that said, let me take you guys to this. So what makes a house sell? I often communicate this to my clients, and I think this is one of the most important things that a potential home seller needs to understand, that any real estate agent that you hire or anything that you have the ability to impact as a homeowner will probably have about an impact on about 20 to 25% of what's going to make the house sell. The things that I covered in the earlier part of this presentation, market conditions, interest rates, overall inventory and demand in the market, those things are going to have 80% impact on what makes a house sell. Low inventory market and timing are the biggest contributors to a house getting sold. That said, the 20% can also be an absolute roadblock if you don't price your house right, if it doesn't show well, if it's not marketed appropriately. And all of these things are part of the equation that gets you to a successful sale. So pricing your house, you want to make sure that you have a really good understanding of what's going on. And it's not, and no data in and of itself makes up a story. It's the aggregate of it. So as you price a home, you want to be looking at lots and lots of data to come up with the right price for a house. You want to make sure that your house shows appropriately, which is why we stage and design every single house that we put on the market. And we take absolutely awesome photographs, and we market our properties with the best available marketing that's out there. And then when you're marketing the property, you want to be sure that you're putting the best possible version of your home on the market and that it's reaching the biggest audience that you can get. And why this is important, this is just so simple to get, is that a large audience creates more demand. And as we discussed earlier, the more demand you have for a limited inventory product, the higher prices go. This is one of the reasons that hiring a real estate agent is so important, because a real estate agent, we have a vast, vast network. I mean, thousands of real estate agents licensed in the state of Connecticut. We want all of them competing to sell your home for you. And the way that you do that is you have a really robust marketing strategy to reach them all. And then lastly, the other piece that's critical is making sure that you have really, really good communication and education through the process about what's driving activity at your home and getting people in to see it. So that's really a high level overview. So Melissa, I told you I was going to put you up first today. So
yes, no warning to that.
No, that's it. This is how we roll. We're winging it, right? So tell us, Melissa, a little bit about MBM Design, what you do, and how you play a critical and strategic role in helping sellers get their homes sold.
Sure, thank you. So MBM Design, we're a full service interior design and home staging firm. And with regards to interior design, is we can come in during the design process of you building new construction, all the way to picking up the phone and saying, you know what, it's time for a new kitchen or a bathroom, or I want to put on a sunroom, or right now I'm getting a lot of calls for home offices. That's really skyrocketing right now, as people are seeing the necessity of having a home office given everything going on with COVID. So I'm working a lot on that. And then with regards to staging is I work with sellers at the beginning process of them selling their home. And that means I come in, I give a consultation, we go room by room and determine how we can declutter, depersonalize, and really stage that property so that it sells fast and for the highest dollar possible. Today I was in Unionville and I had a seller who did have some items, furniture and whatnot. So I came in with a ton of accessories just to spruce the home up. It was vacant, so she did bring in some pieces, and I can work on that all the way to staging a totally vacant home. So what I do with sellers with occupied homes is I go in, like I had said, we go room by room. We determine what we can put in storage. We don't need, like 4 couches in a living room. Let's declutter that, and we want to be able to showcase the maximize the home's potential and the function it offers and the amount of space that I can give to families. And a lot of families who are selling their homes, they've lived in there for many, many years. And it just needs a spruced up refresh, and I can help with that with regards to paint colors. If you're unsure, you lived with a dining room that's had red walls for 20 years. Buyers right now don't want to walk into a dining room with red walls. They want neutral colors, kind of that clean vibe, coastal, fresh look going on. And I go in with the seller and we help make that happen. As you had said, Matt, some sellers have a small home renovation budget that we can work with. So last week I was in Rocky Hill and I went into a home that they're going to list, and he said, you know what, the home's looks good, but I need that wow factor. And what are some small upgrades that I can make to really showcase the potential this home has and make it warm and welcoming? So we spent a few hours doing that last week.
Melissa, why you mentioned you said the word depersonalized. And I hear this from clients all the time. They always say to me, do I have to take my pictures down?
Mm-hmm.
How do you answer that question? Why do you tell people to depersonalize?
Well, it's very important to depersonalize, because you don't want to walk into a home that you can't fall in love with a home that you can't see being your own. It's really important. I tell my sellers, this is a temporary process. We think your family's beautiful, and we really need to take them down, though. Save it for your new home, because a buyer needs to envision themselves living in your space, and they can't do that if you have Disney cruise photos all the way up your second floor stairs.
Right, because they see it still as your home, not their home.
They do. And to say it simple, I say we want to stage your house like an Airbnb rental. So someone can come in, it's clean, it's ready to be occupied. You can see yourself living in there for however long. But we need to take the collectibles and the family photos and all of the awards down, because you walk into that house and you don't feel that it's your own. And
you think it's someone else. Yeah, I've used the example before where I've said you want your home to look lived in, but if you had to guess, you would never know who lived there. What race, what religion, what books they like, what political party, right? Like, it just looks like someone lives here and we have no idea who they are. And I've seen buyers do this, that they will come up with nicknames for homes based on people's personal possessions. So for any of you sellers out there, this is what happens if you don't depersonalize. They go in the house, and then after they look around, they walk out, and the husband looks at the wife and says, "What'd you think, honey?" And the wife says, "I don't know. I don't really like the library. They had too many books that I don't like, or they seemed like they were from this political party and I don't like that." And they're making judgments based on personal things as opposed to the house. And at the end of the day, who cares, right? You don't have to live with them. The reality is you want it to just look like a place that they can live, right? And they do that. The sellers will.
Oh, it's absolutely true. I was in a home last year and I walked in, and it was, one of them was a doctor, and they studied dream interpretation, which is really cool. But then they had probably about 24 books on witchcraft.
Aha, awesome.
So I told them we had to package that up for the new home, and they didn't understand why. And I said, you're not going to sell this house at all. You won't even get an offer if you have 24 books on witchcraft. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
You're going to give people out.
Totally.
So your hobbies are not your buyer's hobbies.
Correct. Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you, Melissa. Thank you very much. Any final thoughts, or what should sellers know right now if they're thinking about selling, about the staging process?
I'd say if they're looking to sell their home sooner rather than later, that it's important to start depersonalizing and packing things up now, because it can be overwhelming. And the sooner that you start, the easier the lower your stress level is going to be. You're going to have a lot of things to worry about. So I always say to my clients, start packing up now. And when you're getting ready to stage your house, actually pack that stuff up, those items. Don't leave it in a corner in your basement. Why do it twice? Start packing it up room by room.
And oh, by the way, that for sellers, that helps you with the emotional disconnection that you need to make, that everybody needs to make when they're selling a home, because there's an emotional connection to any home that you've ever lived in. And the idea that, I'm moving, that decision should be made before you actually even list, right? Like, I'm moving, you're moving, it's happening. And the packing and the moving part, it really helps with that. So Melissa, thank you very, very much as always for your insight and your guidance. So let me bring this to you, Rich. So Rich, talk to us about what's going on in the market. I mean, you've got an abundance of experience. You are closing deals like crazy. What do sellers need to know right now?
Well, I mean, the big thing that's come since we started this in March with the COVID is a lot of sellers, before we even talk about the contract, they're talking about how the closing process is going to occur and how we're going to get the documents signed and how they're going to let inspections in and how I'm going to protect them safety wise. And I put it into my retainer letter, but I sometimes spend 10, 15 minutes going over our policies of how we can either do a power of attorney, remote notarization, Zoom closings in our parking lot, UPS mail-aways if they're out of state, and then the precautions we take, and then the team of the agents and everybody else takes way ahead of time. So they're ready. They're coming in with the contract, and they want to already talk about down the last quarter stretch rather than before. It was always up front of what's going on with the contract. What do you think about the contract? That comes. But right now, it's a lot of health and safety. And once we get over that hurdle, then we start talking about, the attorney review of the sales contract, which, you guys always put into your sales contracts. You always usually have a 2 or 3 day review, which allows me to just make a few comments if I have to, or some wording I'd like a little bit better. Normally, there's no changes. But sometimes it gives the seller in this market a period to say, hey, listen, there's another set of eyes on things, and it just gives them that reassurance.
It's important. It's definitely important, especially in this market where people are making, and especially with sellers right now, where buyers are making some interesting conditions as part of their offers in order to compete, and some of those conditions are actually things that they can't actually do. And so having a second set of eyes is really, really important on that. So appreciate you're bringing that up. So talk to us about some of the health and safety things that you've put in place. I mean,
I'm running into a lot of agents where, the agents, of course, have their clients' best interests at heart. And I'll have multiple agents. I've had agents from your team and other teams across Connecticut call me and say, Rich, we're telling them to have the home professionally cleaned or well in advance cleaned for that final walkthrough. So there's no walkthrough issues that buyer can think of, and we're not getting through. So I have to now have that conversation up front with them and saying, listen, it's in my retainer as a recommendation only, but I put that in the strongest words possible that this buyer is your customer. You want to do everything that's possible. There's a COVID rider attached to this contract. You want to do everything that's possible that how you would want to feel when you were buying that home during this climate. And I think, professionally cleaning a home and other like-minded things, even going back to what Jessica does, it's, she's taken a cluttered home that may appear not dirty, but cluttered and maybe not as well it should appear. And by her doing what she does, it's that combined with a professional cleaning pairs down that home to a point where that buyer's level of fear is gone, and it makes the seller's whole process easier.
Right. Yeah. It's been an interesting, it's just been interesting to watch as everybody's adapted. Right. And I just so appreciate having you as part of the organization and part of the team. And because it's been, again, your ability to adapt and coach both agents and clients through this process has been, it's been very, very appreciated. So
thanks for having me on the team.
Yeah, of course. So what do you think? What advice would you give right now to somebody who's watching and thinking, I might want to sell? I don't know. The market looks like it might be a good time. What would you tell them?
We also handle Rhode Island. We handle, we have handled like you, a lot of different counties. I cannot recall, Matt, and I'll go on your experience as a listing agent, a top listing agent team. The top, by the way, congratulations. I saw you guys were #1 in April. I can't recall a better time where it's been this lopsided, where there's been, I was talking to an agent today from another agency who's literally, her clients are in that range you were describing, first-time home buyers, but they need 2 to 3 bedrooms because of their kids. And now, sadly, they're resorting to desperately trying to find a rent. Even though they're qualified, they keep on getting outbid in the greater West Hartford area. What I'm going back to say is, I can't recall, maybe you can correct me, a better time that I've seen recently where it's a seller's market.
It has actually, you're actually 100% correct that it has never been, not at least since 2006.
I mean, as long as you and I have known each other, I can't recall it.
Not since 2006 when I've been watching the numbers. I have never seen inventory this low. Now, other parts of the country have been experiencing this for some time now. They've been seeing this short inventory, but here in Connecticut, we haven't. And, that really does bode well for sellers. Now, the question, and I think that it's important to put this out there, and we'll be back in another couple of weeks to talk about what's changed, but the question that I think sellers need to be asking themselves, and I think we all need to be aware of, is this a temporary moment in time, or is this the new norm? Are we going to see an uptick in listing inventory that will be outpaced by buyer activity? We just don't know. And a couple of the question marks that loom on the horizon, which we talk about a lot inside of the team as we're anticipating how to coach our clients, is the economic impact of 36 million unemployed people, I think it's 36 at this point, of a stimulus package that really put enough money into the market for about 2 months of keeping everything buoyed. Is the economic impact of that still coming down the pipe, and how will that affect real estate? The good news, I think, for anybody out there that's wondering, is the real estate market going to fall apart? There's a couple of really good things. Number one, the market was very healthy going into this. And because of that sustained health over the course of the last several years, it will likely be less impacted. The other thing that we have going for us here in Connecticut is that our upswings tend to not be as high, but our downswings tend to not be as low. So even with economic turbulence that may show up, this low inventory market is likely to sustain us and keep values approximately where they are, if not on a slight uptick. So I think on the average, right, things will continue to go up and down a little bit, and we may see a little bit of an economic impact that hits us in fourth quarter or first quarter, but my expectation is inventory will still be so low. And there's this whole question of, are we in the middle of Boston and New York going to see the impact of people leaving those densely populated urban centers for areas like ours, which are, it's inarguable. This is an amazing place to raise a family. This is an amazing place to live. I mean, the quality of life here in Central Connecticut is exceptional. And so, folks who are tired of being in there, by the way, I walked a 7,000 square foot home the other day on a preview that's listed for $779,000. I think you can get a 1-bedroom apartment in Manhattan for that same amount. So that 1-bedroom apartment is probably feeling pretty small for those people that have been in there for the last, 13 weeks. Right. So,
but Matt, I've been checking informally just the clients coming through the pipeline, and literally, it hit me that Connecticut's better than most because, again, we're between Boston and New York. We have a cross section of, remember, federal and state employees have never been laid off during this COVID. We have the insurance industry where literally not one of my insurance clients across the board have been laid off.
Yeah.
You have military defense, and then you have all my contractors who you're lucky to get them to do a return phone call. They're so busy doing home renovations.
Yeah.
So that cross section is a pretty good cross section of Connecticut, and they're still employed.
Yeah. And I think, the other piece to add to that is that
in medical.
And what is the impact that everyone, now working from home over the last 13 weeks will have on some of these folks that were required to be in office, just 3 months ago. Now, is there viability for somebody that works in New York or works in Boston to live 2 hours away and go to the office once or twice a week versus 5 days a week? Is that because the return to normal doesn't seem likely in the near future? They're not going to be packing the square footage inside these commercial offices with as many bodies. And so a lot of those folks are going to want to spread out And, a 2-hour commute 5 days a week sounds terrible, but once a week, that's not so bad. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But Rich, I so appreciate your insight, appreciate everything you brought to the conversation today. Thank you. So let me take this to Jason. So Jay, if we're talking about mortgage market and selling our home right now, what do I need to know? I'm about to list my home and I'm going to go buy something else. You talked a little bit about rates, about what's happening there. Tell me a little bit more. What else do I need to know?
Well, first and foremost, I would really get involved in getting pre-qualified for your new mortgage or figuring out what your affordability is as early on as possible, right? It's really important to know your numbers, right? And start, I've said it before, but start with your end game in mind, right? I'm in a $400,000 house. I want to look at 800, right? What does that market look like depending on what I'm financing now? The guidelines and the way lenders are dealing with this, during this specific time, they're really reeling it in a little bit, right? They're a little bit more conservative and gun shy on the jumbo market and higher loan to value. When you're trying to put down as little as possible on a larger mortgage, a little gun shy there right now.
So how is that? Jay, let me stop you there. So how is that impacting people that are selling or buying right now? Like, you're saying that the investor markets are a little bit gun shy, meaning are they anticipating that same economic impact that we were just talking about? They're thinking that there's some sort of a pendulum swing. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, the lenders are really, they're cautious right now, and they've tightened up a little bit. And the reason being is they're not sure how the forbearance situation or people that are in forbearance is going to impact future buyers. They're not sure of the specific perspective that government, entities are going to take for people that take forbearance right now.
Let me just pause you for a second. For
Sure.
Those people that are watching that don't know what forbearance is, that was a lot of banks when the shutdown came and there were mass layoffs and people were furloughed. A lot of banks told their borrowers, the people that were currently borrowing money or had mortgages, that they would put them into a forbearance. And what that meant was they would postpone 3 months worth of payments. They would allow the person that had mortgage payments to not pay for 3 months. However, in a traditional forbearance, and it depends on, there were different ones that were available based on which banks you were borrowing from, but a lot of them, after that third month, when the fourth month comes due, all 4 payments are due all at once. And what Jason's talking about is the investor market, which is where the money comes from to lend money to borrowers, is hesitant to go full bore into this hot market right now because they're concerned. Maybe concern's too strong a word. They're waiting to see what the impact is when that 4-month window comes up and whether or not people start to default. Because an increase in defaults in mortgages obviously leads to an increase in foreclosures, and an increase in foreclosures leads to an unstable housing market. The good news, I think, is, again, we had a very healthy housing market coming into this, and the vast majority of mortgages were nowhere near what we saw in 2008, and in fact, the opposite. So a lot of the congressional acts that went into place to limit sort of predatory lending practices have actually had an impact of stabilizing the housing market. Is that a fair assessment, Jay? Did I kind of get that right?
Yeah, it's not, I wouldn't be overly concerned with it. A lot of the banks, what people have to understand is each bank may have what they call an overlay. So if you were able to get approved, let's say it's just an FHA mortgage, right? FHA is approving your loan, but there may be 4 banks out there that aren't going to approve that loan for a specific reason because they have a little bit tighter guidelines right now. So it's important that, once we start going through your specific situation, we make sure, A, that you're good to go, fully qualified, and that we have a handful of lenders that are willing to do your loan, because the guidelines are shifting daily, and I believe they'll begin to loosen back up once there's a little bit of stability or the unemployment number goes down. Right? Once they see some improvement, we'll go back to the way things were in as close of a respect as possible, right?
Yeah, so just more, obviously banks like predictability, right? Like banks and, traditional bankers like to see that things are going to play out the way they expect them to. Uncertainty is not a banker's friend. And then right now it's unavoidable. There's a lot of uncertainty, both in the market and also, in the health and safety standards of our world. Right. So that's why they're waiting on the sidelines a little bit.
Yeah, and it's not as bad. It's just that, in more of an effort to be fully prepared for the purchase, it's best to get out and have the conversation had right now, figure out it, what you're thinking about doing, and just making sure that there's a viable outfit for it.
Yeah. And obviously there's a viable loan programs for all these people that are buying homes. So clearly there are outlets out there, which is awesome. Jay, what else should we know before we move on? What's the next piece?
I think just to reinforce what you're saying, we have the office down at the Shoreline and we have the office in Canton, and down at the Shoreline, I mean, you're seeing so many New York plates. I was down near the water today, and ton of construction going on. You could almost guarantee that when you see the construction vehicle out, you're going to see 2 or 3 cars with New York plates on there, right? These people are, if they had a house on the water that they used in the summer, they're now renovating it and getting out of the city. It's really happening. Yeah. I have like 3 transactions going on right now for that situation, people coming out of the city and moving here permanently.
One of my mentors also talked about how he believes that in the next year to 2 years, the value of a dollar invested in real estate now will probably see a 2x return because of that increased demand in certain markets. That there are, and I should qualify that, there are certain markets where there is massive upside potential, and I actually believe that we're probably in one. I believe that due to what you just said, the commutability, the proximity to the cities, and we have a lot of green around us, right? And if you had to spend 13 weeks inside of a 2 or a 3 bedroom apartment on the 37th floor of a high rise, you might think that having a backyard in the suburbs seemed awfully attractive right now. And we have lots and lots of suburbs and lots of backyards. So, Jason, thank you so much. Appreciate your insight. So let me take this to you, Ryan. So Ryan, same question. What do we need to know as we prepare to sell our home from an insurance standpoint? And really, I'm actually going to ask this question. I don't know the answer, but what's the impact? What has COVID done inside of the insurance world? What kind of impact have you seen?
Yes. So on the kind of the last part, the COVID impacts on the insurance, I know a lot of people have probably received on the auto side. There's a lot of the media on that of returned premium or getting some credits there, or it's being effectively taken off of a bill.
Yeah, because people aren't commuting anymore, right? So people's average daily mileage has gone down so significantly that auto premiums are going down. By the way, if you haven't called your auto premium carrier, you ought to make a phone call and tell them, I used to commute 30 miles a day and now I'm commuting 0 miles a day. So that should have an impact on your monthly premium.
Absolutely. And people aren't driving to Boston for their 2-hour commute. So,
right.
And then also I like a lot of the points you guys said. I think that there is a lot of attractiveness to some of the suburbs versus the city as people work out of their sunrooms and things like that for their new office. But on the homeowner's side, pretty much the one thing I know, so you mentioned a lot of every house gets staged. So what are you doing with your furniture and your property? Well, it's being, if you haven't found a home yet where you're moving it into, if you're putting it in storage, one thing that the property coverage extends about 10% of your property to off-premise storage. So that's something to, if you're putting usually whatever is covered at say $250,000, $300,000 of personal property, you would get 20 to 30,000 in coverage. So if you're moving a lot of things that are valuable to you to a storage unit, there's some coverage that they provide, but that's one area to just look at.
Okay.
That's not a common claim at all, but that is just something that popped in my head as we were
like
kind of going through this today.
Somebody moves stuff into storage and then there's damage to it. You're Correct. Just saying that you got to make sure that your coverage covers that, your homeowners. That's smart.
You can put a rider on saying, you're going to have X in storage. And then pretty much once the closing happens, contacting your agent for, if you've already found a new home, being ahead of the game, we'd be working with you on that process. and it'd be a smooth transaction from one home to the other, and the policies would overlap, etc.
And you guys, I mean, give us a little background on, the Keating agency. I mean, why does somebody choose to work with you versus calling Geico?
So a lot of that side is there's a lot of the personalization, being local residents as well, and just working through the different stages of your insurance journey. So in this case, you've already either had your first home that you're selling, or you're doing it again. So we want to make sure that that process is efficient for you and that team approach.
Love it. Thanks, Ryan. So I'm gonna open this up just real quick to talk a little bit about the COVID impact. So what we've really done here, and we've talked a lot about this today already, but we've moved our whole process, and all of the professionals that you see here today have been able to service our clients over the last 13 weeks via virtual systems, via self CDC recommended practices, using safe showing options, virtual appointments, and really have a track record at this point based on the trajectory that you've seen in the market of keeping our clients and our agents safe, and being able to continue to transact. So I obviously want to be available to answer any questions that anybody might have. You can always call me directly, or any of our agents on our team, or any of the professionals here if you have concerns or questions about how homes are selling. But I assure you, homes are selling, and they are selling safely. So in any scenario, any question, and no question's a bad one, feel free to reach out. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. This went just over an hour, which is almost exactly what we hoped for. We were shooting for an hour to keep the content light, and hopefully this has been a really, really valuable conversation. We are streaming live on Facebook. Also, if you have any questions and you want to pop them into the chat box here real quick, we will make sure to get back to you and reach out to you directly if you have any questions at all. Go ahead and put them in the chat box with us. And if not, I'll leave this open for any questions that you might have. And we'll look forward to seeing you again next week. And we do this every Tuesday at 5 o'clock. We'll do a live stream of relevant real estate content with a panel of experts. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining. And hope everybody has a great night. Do you guys have any final parting comments before I shut her down?
Thanks for having me.
All right, awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Jason.